Here's my story. Recently, I became a victim of my wife's infidelity, which happened 2 years ago and completely destroyed my family. I'm 31 years old, I'm a man named Alex, and my wife, whom I'll call Laura, is 27 years old. We have two children, a daughter named Sophia, who is 4 years old, and a son, 2-year-old Max. We got married almost 6 years ago, and since then my life has changed, as I thought, for the better. My acquaintance with Laura was in her last semester of college, when I was already firmly on my feet in my career. 13 months after we met, we got married, and she followed me to the East Coast, where I worked for 4 years. It was there that our children were born, bringing us joy and meaning in life. When I was given the opportunity to get a promotion in one of our offices, which was just 15 minutes from our hometowns, Laura and I were over the moon. Moving home was a real holiday for us, especially after the birth of our children. Our parents, who still lived in the area, were overjoyed. My mom and dad, like Laura's mother, were looking forward to seeing their grandchildren more often, loving every moment spent with them. Our families were close, and returning home meant not only convenience for us, but also an important family bond. Laura's father passed away before I met her, so it was especially important for her to be close to her mother, who was finally able to see her grandchildren on a daily basis. My parents had also just moved into a new home in a cozy community for people over 55, and we were given the opportunity to live in their old family home, which was a symbol of parental care and family traditions for us. This house was not just a building, it was a whole story, inscribed in the old walls and absorbed the atmosphere of care and love. The house, located on more than 3 acres of land, was surrounded by forest and a small river flowing directly behind it. This place was special, not only for my parents, but for our entire family, and Laura and I decided not to miss the chance to keep this house in the family by agreeing to pay rent to my parents. Despite the fact that my parents and brother did not demand money for rent, I insisted on my own. My father had recently retired and was counting on rental income, so paying for the house seemed like the right thing to do, especially since in the end all these funds would remain in the family. The house was a historic building, and although the parents always treated it with great love, several important works needed to be done to maintain it. My parents have worked with the same local contractor for the past 35 years, and this company specializing in the renovation of old houses has proven its competence and skill. We entrusted them with the renovation of the house, knowing that they would do everything possible to preserve its unique features and give it even more charm. After compiling a list of necessary projects for our historic home, I decided to waste no time and called the contracting company my parents had worked with over the years. We agreed on a meeting to assess the upcoming work. The owner of the company personally came to the place and gave me a detailed tour of the house, discussing every detail. He turned out to be a wonderful man who founded and grew his company to a level to be proud of. This was confirmed in the reviews on the internet. Out of almost 700 reviews, about 82% of customers gave the company the highest 5-star rating, and another 16% rated their work with 4 stars. Most of these firms, if they are lucky, have ratings in the 3-star range, which in itself speaks of the high quality of the services they provide. A couple of weeks after receiving the assessment, the company began repairs. They acted quickly and always left the area clean and tidy at the end of each day. My wife and I were very pleased with their professionalism and quality of work. Most of the repairs were carried out by 3 of their craftsmen, but one guy in particular stood out for his hard work and skill. Let's call him Zach. Zach was a respectable and polite young man, about my age. He won not only our trust, but also the favor of my daughter, who, watching him through the windows of the 2nd floor, called him the window. All repair work was completed on time, and we finally moved into the house. My wife and kids were excited about the new place, and I loved my new job too. Everything was going smoothly until one chance conversation with my daughter turned my world upside down. That day, my wife went shopping with her mother, and I stayed at home with the children. My mom and I looked after them, played, and enjoyed the day. When my daughter got tired of gaming, she jumped into my lap and we just chatted about nothing. Suddenly, quite unexpectedly, she looked at me with her wide-open eyes and said, "Dad, I saw Mom dozing off with the window." Before I go any further, let me make it clear. My daughter is indeed a very gifted child. I understand that every parent considers their children to be special, but in our case, it's not just parental pride. The doctors recognized her giftedness, and before we moved, we even conducted tests to better understand her abilities. When my daughter Sophia told me that she had seen her mother dozing off with the window, I couldn't believe it right away. But I knew that my girl was very intelligent and able to understand more than she seemed at first glance. Her results on giftedness tests were among the highest the clinic had ever recorded among children her age. This meant that her perception of reality was accurate and detailed, although there was always the possibility that she might have misunderstood something or simply made it up. After all, she had such a wonderful, rich imagination. However, her words were too specific, too coherent to simply be written off as fantasy. I was shocked and asked her to repeat what she had said. She repeated everything word for word, without hesitating or changing the details. I felt anxiety growing in my chest, but I tried to stay calm. Then I asked her to tell me exactly what had happened and how she had seen it. Sophia began her story by saying that my wife put her and Max to sleep during the day. Everything seemed normal until Max dropped his toy behind the bed and started yelling for it to be picked up. Sophia tried to help her brother, but not reaching the toy, she decided to go and call her mother. When I asked if she had called her mother, Sophia replied that she had not. Instead, she went to our bedroom door and, opening it, called my mother. It was then that she saw what she later told me. Mom jumped out of bed, wrapping herself in a blanket, as if trying to hide. She quickly approached Sophia, kissed her, and took her hand. It was so unexpected and strange that at that moment I did not know what to think. Fighting inside me was disbelief, pain, and the realization that my daughter might have witnessed something she shouldn't have seen. I tried to stay calm, even though everything inside me was turning upside down. Sophia spoke in simple and innocent words, but there was a truth behind them that could ruin my life. I didn't want to believe what I heard, but her story was too detailed and accurate to ignore. When my wife gave Sophia the gift, a doubt flashed through my soul, which I could barely contain. The gift chosen for a birthday was supposed to be a surprise in October, and we always had a clear rule: big gifts only for birthdays or Christmas. Sophia knew this very well and never tried to ask for gifts outside of these special occasions. Therefore, the wife's sudden desire to give this gift right now seemed suspicious. The wife justified her act by the fact that Sophia had behaved perfectly lately and deserved a special reward. Her words sounded sincere, but something in it did not fit in my head. Could this be a way to make amends or distract Sophia's attention from what she saw and told me? Perhaps it was an attempt to buy her silence, gently and imperceptibly, under the guise of a gift. I told my wife that I was not angry, although anxiety was growing inside me. I felt that perhaps with this gesture, my wife was trying to strengthen her secret by manipulating children's feelings, making a gift as a symbol of innocence and gratitude. Sophia, not suspecting anything wrong, happily accepted the gift, but I knew that her sincerity and trust in us, her parents, could become a tool in the wrong hands. At the moment when Sophia was unwrapping her unexpected gift with shining eyes, I realized that now I had to make a difficult decision. I could not allow my daughter to become a hostage to other people's mistakes and secrets. At that moment, looking at my happy, carefree daughter, I realized that I had to be her protector, her truth, and support in this world, where even the closest ones can turn out to be traitors. Sophia was visibly concerned when her mother suggested that she open the gift ahead of time. She said with a serious look that she should not receive it before her birthday, which caused Laura surprise and some confusion. My wife tried to convince her that she deserved this gift now, because she was such a good girl, and even tried to get me to her side. But Sophia unexpectedly refused, insisting that she wanted to leave the gift until her birthday. At that moment, she looked at me, looking for support, and I knew I had to intervene. I calmly said that let's take the gift upstairs and put it in her closet to wait for the right moment. My wife clearly did not expect such a reaction from either me or Sophia. She looked confused and stunned, but I didn't bother to show my thoughts. I knew that Sophia was too smart for her age and capable of sensing something was wrong, so her refusal was not surprising to me, but quite logical. We went upstairs, took the gift to the closet, and I noticed how Sophia literally breathed a sigh of relief when the issue with the unexpected gift was resolved. Her calmness returned, and she went downstairs with a light heart, where my father and brother had already gathered. We spent the rest of the day together, enjoying family interactions, laughing, eating, and just being happy together. But my mind, despite the outward calmness, was full of anxious thoughts. Later in the evening, I was going to talk to my wife directly to discuss what I had heard from Sophia. But something stopped me. If what our daughter told us was true, my wife would surely deny it. And if it was an invention, then why disturb the peace of the family? Instead, I told Laura that I would need to work on my home computer on Sunday morning. She agreed, even offered to stand with me, but I refused. In the morning, while everyone was sleeping, I checked our home computer. I didn't find anything suspicious. Then I took my wife's phone and entered her password. Again, nothing. For a moment, it even seemed to me that Sophia could have made it all up, but her story was too detailed to be a simple fantasy. We spent the rest of the day at my parents' house, where relatives gathered, including an aunt and uncle whom I had not seen in more than 2 years. They had flown in from out of town, and it was a great opportunity to meet them and introduce them to Max, whom they had seen for the first time. The day passed beautifully with my family, and we enjoyed every minute, forgetting about the worries and doubts that tormented me the day before. Deep inside, however, I knew that I would soon have to return to the difficult conversation and accept reality, whatever it might be. On Monday, I returned to work, but Sophia's words haunted me. I couldn't shake my anxious thoughts all day, so I drove past our house several times trying to calm down. On Tuesday and Wednesday, I did the same, although I did not notice anything suspicious. But the feeling that Sophia could be right did not let go. I considered hiring a private investigator, but instead decided to purchase a camera system from Best Buy. That evening, when Laura and Sophia went to the event at the Nature Center, I stayed at home with Max and set up the cameras. I placed the first one outside, near the garage, pointing it to the driveway. I installed the second one in the living room and the third one in our bedroom. I tried to hide each camera so that it was difficult to detect them. The camera in the bedroom was especially disturbing. Although it merged with the cornice, it could be seen if you looked straight up, lying on the bed. Every morning before going to work, I turned on the system, and in the evening, before coming home, I turned it off. My wife and kids were rarely in the living room or driveway during the day, so the cameras didn't attract too much attention. Everything went smoothly until the following Tuesday. At 1:46 p.m., I received an alert from the camera in the driveway. After checking the recording, I saw a truck of the contracting company approaching. Zach got out, headed for the door, and walked into the house. A few seconds later, an alert came from the living room, and on the screen, I saw my wife greeting Zach with a kiss. Everything I feared so much was confirmed. Sophia was right. I rushed to the car and rushed home, picking up my mother on the way. I told her what was happening and asked her to come as soon as possible. She promised to take her brother, aunt, and uncle with her. I continued to talk to them on the phone when a new alert came, this time from the bedroom. I understood what was happening there now. Despite the emotions that overwhelmed me, I tried to stay calm. On the way, I gave my family clear instructions. I instructed my mother and aunt to take the children outside when we ran into Laura. My brother and uncle agreed to accompany me to the bedroom, to witness and, if necessary, to restrain me from rash action. When we drove up to the house, we parked so as to block the exit of Zach's truck. We then quietly went inside, knowing that the bedroom was at the back of the house, and the culprits had no chance of noticing our approach. Instead of getting into an aggressive confrontation, you chose to record what was happening on your phone, thereby recording everything that happened for future actions, whether legal or personal. When we reached the bedroom, I walked in front. My brother and uncle followed me. and a little behind, holding their breath, my mother and aunt walked. Sounds coming from behind the door drowned out our footsteps. With each passing moment, the tension grew, and his heart pounded as if it was about to burst out of his chest. I gestured to my mother and aunt to go further into the nursery, where they were told to go. At that moment, I glanced at my brother and uncle, as if asking if they were ready for what awaited us outside the door. Both nodded silently in agreement. Gathering my courage, I turned the door handle and pushed it. At the same moment, my wife, noticing us, cried out, "Oh no! Oh my God!" In a panic, Zach instantly jumped out of bed, grabbed his clothes, but in the turmoil, he began to fall, apologizing and getting tangled in his own things. I took out my phone and turned on the camera, silently filming what was happening. The scene unfolding in front of me was absurd and humiliating, but I kept my absolute cool. I held the phone steady, slowly moving the camera from one side to the other, capturing every moment of their despair. Zach continued to apologize, desperately trying to get dressed. At this time, my wife pulled the sheet over her face, shielding herself from us, and burst into tears. Through her tears, she muttered, "This shouldn't have happened, Alex. I didn't mean to hurt you. I love you so much. Forgive me." Time seems to have stopped. After a few minutes, Zach finally got dressed and sank to the floor, covering his face with his hands as he continued to apologize. My wife only sobbed under the sheets, unable to meet my gaze. I calmly told Zach to get his car out of the garage. He got up instantly and hurried to the door. But before I left, I stopped him, saying, "Don't try to take your truck. It's blocked, and I'll call the company myself to pick it up." Then I dialed my mother-in-law's number. My voice was calm, but the words sounded cold and distant. I told her what had happened and asked her to come to pick up my daughter. At this moment, my wife was still lying on the bed under the covers, begging me not to let her go, but I did not pay any attention to her requests. Soon, my mother-in-law drove up. When she entered the house, I, my brother, and uncle silently left the bedroom, giving her the opportunity to talk to my daughter. From somewhere in the back of the house, I heard her start shouting at her wife, who, choking on tears, was only trying to justify something indistinctly. To my surprise, my wife left the house without any resistance, quickly heading to the car with her head down. She cried and did not say a word goodbye. Her state was like shock mixed with deep shame. My mother-in-law, before leaving, came up to me, apologized, hugged me tightly, kissed me on the cheek, and quietly said, "We love you." After they left, I returned to the children, trying to restore at least some normalcy in our house. Then I called the contracting company. I was connected to the owner, and after hearing the whole story from me, he was stunned and immediately apologized. He assured that the company would do everything to make amends. I thanked him and ended the conversation. About an hour later, the company's employees arrived and picked up the truck. The next Monday, Zach was no longer seen at work. I took the day off to meet with a lawyer and discuss the divorce proceedings. At the same time, I hired another lawyer from the same firm to settle the situation with the contractor company. Despite the respect for the owner and for the company he has built, I intend to seek compensation for the moral damage that their employee caused to me and my family. After what had happened, I did not say a word to my wife. She called and texted me nonstop, begging for forgiveness and begging for a second chance. But I remained adamant, following the advice of my lawyer. I decided that there was no more room for her here, and without wasting time, I took out all her belongings. My brother and his friend helped me carry them to her mother's house. Every morning, her mother would come to my house at 6:30 a.m. to look after the kids while I was at work. My wife, who stayed in the car, waited for me to leave for the office before entering the house. I worked until 5, then had dinner at a restaurant, and returned home at about 7:30 in the evening. At this time, my wife, along with her mother, usually finished dinner with the children and prepared to leave. When I drove up to the house, I called my mother-in-law to warn her of my arrival. My wife would immediately leave the house and get into the car, avoiding me while her mother stayed with the children. I entered the house, ignoring her, passing by as if by an empty place. I usually spend a few minutes talking to my mother-in-law, summing up the day before she left. Then I devoted the rest of the evening to my children. This routine cycle was repeated daily, 7 days a week. To some, this might seem excessive, but I couldn't tolerate her presence in my life. If I had such an opportunity, I would forbid her to see the children at all. But alas, the law is not on my side. My anger knew no bounds, because she not only betrayed me, but also let a stranger into our bedroom while the children were in the next room. I was even more outraged that she had forced our daughter to lie for her. For me, it was unforgivable. I instructed my lawyer to seek full custody of the children, but she was skeptical, explaining that given my working hours, it would be extremely difficult to win the case. When I first met with the lawyer, she made it clear that the chances of limiting her visibility to the children only until the weekend were slim, and alimony would probably not be granted unless my wife could prove that I had caused her infidelity. There was no truth to it. I had been absolutely faithful to her throughout our marriage and would never jeopardize my reputation or the well-being of my family. At this time, I made the decision to sell our house, as the memories associated with it were spoiled to the limit. The house, which once seemed like a cozy and safe refuge, now only reminded of betrayal and pain. I turned to the appraisers, and they returned with incredible news. The cost of the house was almost twice the amount that we paid when buying it. Parents who once purchased it more than 30 years ago were amazed at this increase in value, because in all these years they had never made an appraisal. According to my parents' long-standing plans, the proceeds from the sale of the house will be divided equally between me and my brother. In addition to this, we decided to sell our parents' house, from which my brother will also receive his half. Thus, his financial situation will improve so much that he will be able to buy himself a decent home. As for me, after all the sales, my bank account will have a little more than $2 million. I prefer not to tie my finances to real estate, preferring liquid assets. Despite the fact that I have always been able to manage my money competently and was engaged in financial planning, this time I decided to turn to a professional consultant. I want to make sure that my assets are allocated securely and thoughtfully to secure the future of my children and ensure that the family does not lack for anything. As for my wife, she will eventually have her own home, but the responsibility for paying for it and all current bills will fall entirely on her shoulders. I instructed my lawyer to prepare a proposal according to which I would support her financially only for 3 years and no more. This offer is quite generous and more than fair. I do not intend to give her a cent beyond what is prescribed by law. I gave clear instructions to my lawyer. After the divorce was completed, I no longer wanted to see her and was not going to let her back into my life. I'll do everything I can to make sure she doesn't get a penny out of my fortune. Now, the case is in legal process, and my wife's lawyer is preparing a counteroffer. We are waiting for the justice system to take its course, but I am determined to make sure that everything is in accordance with my conditions. I sincerely hope that this difficult stage of my life will soon come to an end, and I will be able to return to a normal, quiet life without having to face my wife. I never believed in the possibility of a second chance when it comes to cheating. There is no way back for me here. What happened remains a deep scar on my soul. I decided to share this story for several reasons. Firstly, this is a kind of warning to others. Be careful and try to really get to know the person with whom you are going to connect your life. In my case, I was sure I knew my wife. Everything looked great, and I was madly in love with her. I think that's why her betrayal was such a stunning blow to me. Secondly, the presentation of my thoughts and experiences became a kind of act of therapy for me. Writing, being able to speak up, and get feedback from other people all helped me deal with this pain. I am eternally grateful to my family for their support. My parents were there every step of the way, showing boundless understanding and warmth. My friends also turned out to be real supports. They assure me that I am holding up with dignity in such a difficult situation. Even my brother admitted that he didn't understand how I kept my composure. But most of all, I know that I need to stay strong for the sake of my children. It is their well-being and happiness that supports me in the most difficult moments. This is the core, that does not let me lose heart. If you are reading these lines and sympathize with my story, I will be glad to have your support. Like, subscribe to our channel and share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for being with us and sharing this journey together.